Welcome to the Bearded Finisher Podcast, your one-stop show for all things finishing and coatings. Your host, Zach, and a variety of industry experts will guide you through the art of perfecting your finishing and business game. From seasoned pros to fresh faces, get ready for tips, tricks, and trends to elevate your knowledge and business to the next level.
What is going on, everybody? We've got Jamie with Dealing in Design on the show today. What's going on, Jamie?
Not much, man. How we doing, Zach? So happy to be here. What's going on?
Man, I'm happy you're here as well, man. It's just a nice day. Just enjoying it. I mean, I've been kind of looking forward. This is probably second international episode, I would call it.
Second international episode. Second Jamie as well?
Second Jamie as well. Yeah, we had Jamie from a boat academy. Now we got Jamie Dealing in Design. I couldn't have planned it better.
Hell yeah. No, hey, man, stoked to be here. Very excited. I've been listening to a few pods. I think what you're doing is great, man. So thanks a lot for having me.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it, man. So a little bit about you for the listeners out there. Jamie does furniture, would say antique furniture restoration is probably the best description. You've been doing it for quite a while. So let's just kind of jump in and share your story. How'd you get into the world of furniture refinishing?
Yeah, man, we do sort of decorative arts restoration. So I'd sort of pride myself on doing all styles, all eras, but we do a lot of really old stuff, a lot of super modern stuff, hugely varied pieces with heaps of different mediums. So we don't just stick to woodwork. We do metal, we do brazing, we do bronzing, we do veneer work, we do repair work. So I would call myself a furniture maker, and then we do restoration, but now it's just purely restoration. But how I got into it, I'm 34 now, and I got into it when I was 18. So as soon as I left school, I worked for an antique and art dealer, and he had a workshop, and it was probably the biggest workshop in Australia I don't know if that's saying much, but it's the biggest workshop in Australia for furniture restoration. But it was interesting. I got in very, very young, 18, and just started working like crazy. Same sort of thing as many people that start. You got to start at the bottom and just, sweep the floors, wash the toilets, strip the furniture, sand the timber, all that jazz. But I just got into it because I didn't know what to do other than woodwork. I loved working with stuff. I played music. I was in bands, so it was either do that or work with timber and stripping and sanding. And I'd never really seen beautiful pieces of furniture growing up, but I went for this sort of there was I guess you had like a job listing for entry-level restorer. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then went to the interview. Pretty funny story, actually. This is I never really told anyone this. I rolled up in like a suit. I was 18 and I was suited up because it was like a fancy, it was like a fancy shop. I didn't know what to do. So I wore like a full suit and went in as an 18-year-old asking to strip furniture.
I mean, I can't even imagine the looks you get into a full suit walking into a finish shop.
Well, the funny thing is, this is what the difference was, is this was like a big shop on a high street. They had I think the building back then was worth like $10 million. It was a huge building, and it was just hundreds of square meters or square feet for the US, but hundreds of square feet of like crazy furniture that was all imported from Europe. So we actually worked for an antique and art dealer, and then the workshop was separate. It was run by John, who was my mentor, and he was a restorer. And he ran that workshop, but he only had one client, who was Phil, the person that owned the decorative arts company. So it's kind of funny. I worked for John, but we only had one client, who was Phil, the owner of the business. And so it was like an interesting mix. I learned from this guy who was an absolute weapon. He was like, could do anything, an absolute furniture wizard. But then we just had one client who was this sort of eccentric art dealer. So it was interesting. He never really had to struggle for work, John, because he didn't have those kind of constant pressures that everyone has during the day. So John could just be like light-footed and chilled and funny, and he'd take the piss out of the furniture and he would make fun of the client we had. And so like it was this really like relaxed approach to furniture restoration, where like now in my business, when I have guys in, it's not as chill because you've got so much stuff going on.
So much crap going on in your head.
Yeah. So I started there and just worked. I think I worked for them for 9 years. John was in the last 10 years of his he retired, so I had like 9 years of working with John. And so I started within like 5 or 6 years, I started running the workshop, just doing everything. You sort of graduate up from doing all like the restoration, the repairs, we used to make furniture and then refinish stuff, and we would do gilding and brazing and cutting glass and coloring glass and all that kind of stuff. And then I started sort of running the operations and doing all the manifestos for bringing stuff in from overseas. And then the business just started winding down, and I ended up buying all the material off John for like nothing because he was retiring and he was an absolute legend. So he gave me all of his equipment for basically nothing. And then I just started running my own thing. It was kind of like a shifting situation where I started working like 3 days for them and 2 days for myself, or like, you got to like bootstrap things in the beginning, and I would just take jobs on the side just all the time. And they were really great. They were like, as long as it's not in the way, as long as you're not working on the hours, we don't care. So I was like, fantastic. And sort of slowly started my own business. It's funny, we're on the podcast. Basically what started my business was a podcast. Like I started my own podcast. Yeah, it's crazy. So I started a podcast 2017 when I started the business, and I called it Dealing in Design, which is the name of my business now. But the podcast came first, which is funny, and it was called Dealing in Design, and I just interviewed design dealers, so people who were like my boss, who traveled overseas, bought furniture, brought it back, and would sell it. And I basically spoke to people in my city, and then all of them clearly have a lot of work, and they all started sending me work. So I did like 10, 15 episodes. And then they were like, oh, you do furniture restoration? I'm like, yeah. And I was still employed at that time and taking on work on the side and working all my weekends and working all nights and bleeding from the eyeballs. And
sounds like it.
And doing the podcast and editing it and all that. And then they all just started sending me work. And then I was like, oh, great. I've got no time to do anything else now. So that's sort of how I got into the industry. But I've never done anything else. I don't know anything else. I just know furniture restoration.
And podcasting.
And podcasting and talking smack and being silly online. That's all I know how to do. I don't know how to do anything else, man.
So do you still do the podcast, or did that you fill up the troughs? And
it's literally my favorite thing to do. It's so enjoyable speaking to people. That's why I'm so stoked to be here.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. It is really, really fun. And when I started it, I had all this time, and I was like, I'd have a handful of jobs on, and then I would just do these podcasts. So I started flying to different cities. I started going to Sydney and meeting people, setting podcasting up, just, taxes, trying to like, use it for travel expense so I could lower my taxes, doing all that kind of stuff. It was fantastic. But then I got so busy, started employing people, and then I sort of dipped off the podcast, but we are back recently, as in the last year, we've been recording podcasts. That's how I know Aaron, because I had him on the pod. So we are currently putting them out, but not as consistent as the Bearded Finisher. I'll tell you that. You're doing a great job. I'm sort of haphazardly making my way through.
It's been we started the podcast back in May.
Oh, really? So it's that fresh? I didn't know it's that fresh.
Yeah. And I had a mentor that I was on his podcast, who's kind of become a mentor to me, a guy named Steve Woodpreneur. Do you know him?
I don't. I'm sorry.
He does a lot of like sawmill podcasts.
I'll write him down.
His family's in the sawmill. Steve. LaSalle. I'll butcher the shit out of his name. But Woodpreneur Network is the name of his podcast, the Woodpreneur. And he does a lot of small mills and cabinet shops. Awesome guy. I was on his show, and then he and I just kind of started talking and really connected, and he got me kind of revived and wanting to do this. So I quit my corporate job, paint manufacturing. I worked for an industrial wood coatings manufacturer.
Oh, really?
So prior to this, so yeah, I worked for a company called CIC. We manufactured Centurion wood coatings, which is an industrial water-based 2K poly.
Oh,
And
wow.
then prior
Okay.
to that, I had my own finishing company for 10, 12 years in Oklahoma. So, but got into the podcast and was kind of using it as a segue to kind of maybe do some consulting because I thought it was fun. I thought, I could do consulting and I have a couple coaching and consulting clients, but when I started really getting into the podcast, I was like, this is way more fun than coaching and consulting.
Yeah, it's a good time. I mean, I've never been able to like. It's for the love of the game for a long time, and I need to commit more to the love of the game because I haven't ever turned a profit out of it. Other than the funny thing is, it has brought a lot of work, so I should probably continue to do it.
I mean, I would say a decent profit if you've built your business basically off of it. That's pretty good. I mean, the profit side's the hard one.
Yeah. I mean, I escaped it probably a little quickly. It's more because I just got spread so thin, and now I'm trying to do it again. But we are moving more into producing video and stuff now. We're doing a lot of content, and we're setting up like a production company and stuff like that. So we're doing sort of the pod is still there, but we're sort of trying to do a lot more filming and everything like that. So
that's kind of where I'm not a lot of production, but so I'm doing a call to action now for sponsors and investors to create a studio,
yeah.
create a podcast studio. And then it's also like a platform for the painting and the finishing community. They can have it to have meetings at, want to do coaching sessions and software. So that's like my 2025 goal. Cause I live in a 45-foot bus,
Oh, really?
like a motorhome. Yeah. We live full time in a motorhome.
Oh man, that's amazing.
So like right now I'm in the motorhome. I just have it all set up inside the motorhome, like myself, my wife, and we have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we live full time, travel all the time.
Wow, what a fascinating life. That's so interesting.
It's a great life. We love it. I mean, her parents live in Colorado. Her brother lives in South Carolina. So we visit them. We have family and still in Oklahoma. So, I mean, we just slides in and hit the road.
That is so cool, man. That's such an admirable life. That sounds so interesting. Do people on the pod know that? Do they all know the motorhome?
Most of them. I mean, not a lot of them. And it was by happy accident. We lived in Dallas, and my wife got moved down to a little town called Waco. She works for a government contractor.
Waco, Texas. I've heard of that. I have heard of Waco.
So we went down to visit Waco, and we were like, I don't think we're going to be here that long. And it's sorry, Waco people that may listen, but comes across as a little methy, I guess, is the best way that I can explain it.
You don't want to be described as methy. I'll be honest. If we got off the call and you said, Jamie's great, he's a little methy, I'd be a little upset.
I mean, it was just, so we didn't want to buy a house because we knew it wouldn't be long term. So we sold our house in Texas and we bought like a bus, like a tour bus that you live in. And we were like, we'll do this for a year. But we're a year and a half into it. And like, we absolutely love it.
Man, what a bold move. That is, I love hearing people doing like large, big, sweeping moves like that. And that is so cool. They're like, hey, we're selling the house, get in the bus.
And now, I mean, kids get older, maybe do something different, but 7 and 3, and we just go anywhere we want. If the weather gets bad,
How cool is that?
just go. If it gets weird, just go.
If it gets weird, how about work? Do you have to be somewhere, both of you, for work? Like, you have to live in a certain area, but then you get up and go?
Yeah, my wife, she has an office here. She just started a new job, so we're back in Dallas now. Right at Christmas, she got offered another job, still in the defense. She works for a defense contractor. And so she has a job, but she travels a lot, and she can work remote. So we have Starlink on top of the bus.
Hell yeah.
So if somebody needs us or her parents like, hey, come visit, and kids have a long break, I mean, my studio, I'm in it. Like I just kick everyone out of the bus to record the podcast.
And you guys are ready for the apocalypse as well, man. You got Starlink there. You can just get going. No matter what happens, you get up and get moving.
Yeah, but I think my wife has a friend who I don't know if he's a big prepper, but maybe kind of a prepper. He's figured out he has a still in his house and he makes his own diesel fuel.
Whoa.
And he keeps enough diesel fuel for his bus so he can get to his farm. So I'm like, all right, we're not preppers until we can make our own diesel. How do we make our own diesel?
I'll be honest, man, that sounds a little methy. Sounds like he's cooking something, man. I don't know.
Hey, I've had his moonshine at Christmas time. It could be considered jet fuel.
I've never had a moonshine that is not just the most potent liquid on the planet.
I just watched this video. I don't know, it's this guy from the UK, younger guy, and he comes to the US. He talks about having all this stuff, and he's never had moonshine. He goes into this bar in West Virginia, and the bartender brings out a mason jar and has 160 written on it. It's 160 proof moonshine.
Oh, man.
It's like, you guys need to try it. And they're like, so he pours them in little shot glasses. And right before he can say, sip it, don't drink the whole thing, it's two British guys. One guy just shoots the whole thing. I thought he was going to die.
Oh, man. You don't need a spirit where they go, don't consume it all at once. That's not a spirit I want to have. I want to be any part of.
If the warning on the label is don't do a shot, don't drink 1 ounce of this, you might die. I just really don't think that needs to be made.
Yeah, man, that's not for me. That's not for me. We've been to Southeast Asia a few times. It's where a lot of Australians holiday because it's very close. So Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, all that's not too far. It's like a 6-hour flight from many parts of Australia. So had a lot of moonshine in those parts. You don't know, a lot of rice spirits. You don't know what the heck's going on in there. That they hit you hard.
Yeah,
that's like a bat to the back of the head all of a sudden. You don't need that in your life. Trust me.
That one hurts for a couple days. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about, being that we're mostly on the coatings world, what are the prominent coatings that you guys are using over down there in Australia? I mean, particularly yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different stuff. I mean, and I'm assuming we have a lot of different brands, that's for sure, compared to y'all in America. But a lot of what we do is traditional stuff. So probably the most used finish is shellac, which is like an old school finish. A lot of people don't still use shellac. Do a lot of French polishing for certain, because a lot of it's for like museums or for collectors, and some of the stuff is it's like documented of what's been finished on it and has to continue to be finished the same way.
They want a period, like the same period on the finish that was used whenever it was originally done.
Yeah, exactly. And some of them are part of collections. Like some of them are like worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. So it's like you have to sort of do it in a specific way. But then we also do modern furniture and mid-century stuff. And most of that is pre-catalyzed lacquer. Most of that sort of stuff. But none of the polyurethanes or the polyesters or anything like that, just because a lot of them aren't so reversible compared to like a pre-cat can strip off easier, and shellac strips easier like a polyester or anything like that. I always find with decorative arts or antiques or furniture, you need a two-way door. You need to be able to move in and move out. You need to be able to put a finish on. You need to be able to take it off.
That's such a good point. I've never thought about that in the world of furniture.
Yeah, you can't have a one-way door where you go, I'm putting this coating on, and then you can never reverse it, because it's just, some of these things have been around for 200, 300 years, or even if they've been around for 60 years, but they're like a designer piece and they're worth X amount of money, you need to be able to ensure the person that it's going to be, you can dial it back and then you can restore it again. So I find a lot of those finishes more industrial, or they're great for like joinery or interiors or, kitchens and whatever. That's a bit of a different relationship. People have a bit of a different relationships to their built-in products as they do their freestanding furniture. So, the two-way door thing is something we always think about.
Man, I mean, 15 years in this business, and I've always wondered. I've never had it explained like that. That's freaking genius explanation of the two-way door. I mean, I've never heard that explanation, and it makes so much sense because I've always been curious. Was telling Aaron this when we were talking, like, I don't get why you guys are so pre-cat CV if you have to, but most of it's pre-cat and shellac. I mean, God, that makes sense. That's some good info.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It's like, and you have a lot of clients that come back, and like I've been doing this for 15 years or 16 years. I started when I was 18, so it's very close to half my life. And so I've worked on many of the same pieces that I've already worked on, if you know what I mean. So I've done stuff for clients, and then 10 years later, I've refinished the same thing, or I've just touched it up, or like brought it back to life and revived it. And you just thank yourself, when it comes back and you go, thank Christ I did this in a way that is reversible. If I did it in some other finish and then it cracked and they go, hey, Jamie, can you fix this? And I go, nah, that thing's no good because I put some finish on it that I can't repair. They're like, you're an idiot. What did you do that for? So like there's a huge, you sort of hold yourself to this, you hold your feet to the fire really when you're taking these jobs with these clients. And some of these clients are, high value clients, they expect something. They expect to call you and go, come here and fix this thing that you did 8, 10, 12 years ago. And you've got to do it and you've got to be able to. So whenever I'm doing it, I'm always thinking, how is this reversible? What's the life cycle of this piece? It can't be you could blow heaps of lacquers and you could just send stuff out the door. But I see this whole thing far more as like an artistic, creative pursuit than like a business for myself. You know what I mean? It is a business, but it's not.
I mean, yeah, when you're in the pre-cat and the shellac world, about 10 years before you start seeing the amber and maybe some of the luster of it starts fading, and then you have to have it refinished, but it's doable.
Yeah, we've worked on a lot of two-pack, and I sprayed two-pack and everything when I was an apprentice. Like stuff would start coming in as two-pack, and the only way we could sort of refinish it was, hitting it with the orbital or wet and dry, sanding it, and then spraying two-pack back over it, if you know what I mean, to try to put a new skin over it. But there's not that many pieces that require that, and if they do, we can outsource them. So I don't need. We can find a refinisher that does that, and we can do all the prep work, and then we can tell them what needs to be done. But that might be one job every year, or maybe two jobs a year that we might just manage how it's done and consult on it. But we won't. I don't have to do it, and I don't really want to be honest. I just a lot of what we do is being a restorer. There's a lot of like refinishes or polishers. I find that I'm like restoring is a little different. You have to be able to do what we do, a lot of complex repairs and stuff. And then we do a lot of color matching of veneer patches and everything. And then we refinish. So I much prefer getting into that stuff. And then if there's we have the spray booth here, but if there's big spray jobs like that, I'd rather outsource some of that and clear the workshop space for like the fiddly, faffy things that I like doing.
All the, the ornate woodwork and stuff. Yeah. I mean, I used to tell my guys all the time that I would say 80% of painting is being able to solve problems that arise while you're painting. I mean,
100%.
Finishing. I mean, that's all it is
Yeah.
learning putties or wax sticks and sanding techniques. I mean, blending techniques with different powders. And I mean, you guys did it. You do it a million times more. We were like the reverse. We did it, but it was probably maybe half a dozen times a year where someone gouged a wood floor and destroyed a wood floor, and then hey, Zach, can you guys fix
Touch
this?
that out. Yeah, half of it is product knowledge. Like especially with the coating business that you're in, half of it is just product knowledge and knowing what's out there and understanding baseline chemistry. Like you need to know what layers on top of itself. So you need to really understand like the fundamental ingredients in everything and how they layer and how they stack on top of each other, what can work and what doesn't work, and sometimes staying within product lines and then adding things from other product lines into it. And half of it's just understanding how the hell things work. And another part is just knowing what constitutes a good finish and how the hell to do a lot of prep work, because as finishers, we all know that just prep is just 95% of the work, and putting the skin on is the fun part. You're like, great, we're having fun now.
That's the gravy part.
By the time you're putting a finish on, you're like, we're home, basically. Like
you may get to that and you're like, all right, this is cakewalk from here on out.
Yeah, totally.
Do you guys is Mohawk in Australia?
No, and I've spoken to Aaron about this because I was always so interested in the Mohawk because I always see people, especially they have the little cans, the little spray and lacquer out of cans. I'm like, whoa, these dudes are using cans. But no, we haven't got the Mohawk products. I have actually imported them before and used them just to see what they were like. There's like a luthier supplier, like a instrument maker, who brought it in for a little bit. But it was such small quantities that I couldn't really get into it. But no, we use Sherwin-Williams lacquers here, which I think it's a British company, or it was at least a while ago.
Until SW bought them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think everything used to be local or regional. Now it's just some mega conglomerate that's just chewing the world up.
So, do you guys have access to when I started doing a lot of that finishing and touch up stuff, Mohawk was your go to because they probably have 200 variations of those crayons that you can fill into color with, and they have fillable pens, and they have, I don't know, melt-in epoxies, probably another 200 colors there.
Wow, that is a lot.
Blend them. I mean, it was so much. And I remember when I first got introduced to your aerosols, as somebody was in the beginning, they were spraying some clear nitro lacquer on some trim, and it just blushed. And I was like, shit, I don't want to sand this down. And I was at the paint store, and the paint store manager was like, hey, just grab a can of that aerosol retarder right there from Mohawk and just go in and just spray it on. So I was like, no, that's not going to work. That's going to be shit. Sure enough, I take that aerosol can and I spray it on that stain trim that was just a nitro lacquer, and just all it was retardant in this aerosol can.
Yeah.
Blush gone.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I've heard that, which would be cool to see. We mix up something of our own, which John, who I learnt off, I don't know if anyone else does this technique, to be honest. But he taught me, and they used to do it back in the UK, back in the 60s. So it comes from, it's an old technique for getting blush out of lacquer. Yeah, exactly. But it's it's a mix we do where we put it into a rubber, like an old French polishing rubber, and it's like you dilute 2 types of thinners, add back the lacquer in, water it down, dilute it down, and then we rub it, pulls out all the blush, spray another coat over it, and it's good to go. So we have a similar technique to do it, but it's something I just mix up here. That's why I like understanding the fundamental ingredients that goes into stuff. A lot of people always ask me, what brand is that? What brand is this? I'm like, the brands most of the times just don't matter. You know, to know what the hell is inside the can is the most important thing, because it can be like Mohawk.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff. It's just the core ingredients are all the same. I remember talking to this old school when I was in paint manufacturing. Now that was a world that got me. I mean, for lack of a better term, you get into actual making paint and knowing what goes in it. You're like the first week, you're just going to sit there and go, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
It's mind blowing. For instance, I don't care who the manufacturer is, water-based paint has silicone in it. Every water-based paint
really
has silicone in it. What are we taught in the world of painting? Paint and silicone don't mix.
Yeah, silicon's the devil.
Exactly. It's in every water-based paint that's out there. It's a forced compatibility type deal, but there's stuff like that. And I remember talking to this really old school chemist one time, and I remember him telling me, this guy, I mean, back in the days where they were putting mercury and everything in the paint,
lead-based paints, all of it.
For all intents and purposes, the guy should be dead. But he's like late 80s and still smokes like a pack a day, talking about when he used to mix paint in the good old days.
Oh, man, what a weapon. I like this guy.
Healthy as an ox. So I'm like, maybe they were doing something right then that we're not doing right now.
Dude, I've been lobbying to bring back mercury and lead-based paints for years. No,
I'm like, but he told me that when they were starting to get rid of lead paint and they were trying to force people out of using it, the old school chemists would just go to Walmart or go to wherever hardware store and buy every thermometer they could. And then there was a day that everyone was just breaking open the old thermometers.
Oh, man. No, you can't do that. Have you heard with the mercury? You know the term "mad as a hatter." How
Yeah.
like hatters were known as being mad back in the day. They're milliners, people that make hats, and they were called mad as a hatter. Maybe you know this, I don't know, but that's because they would use mercury to fuse the felt together back in the day. So they'd heat mercury up and they'd use it to join fabrics, and they would all go crazy. They'd all be breathing in the mercury, and they'd all end up absolutely nuts. So that's people going around cracking mercury open is insane.
Back in the day, it's like that line where you couldn't buy mercury anymore, but the old school paint guys still wanted to use mercury in the paint. I mean, it was just.
There's like a noticeable difference in whatever they say IQ levels or something at the time of lead-based paint, and once they got rid of lead-based paints, how IQ levels went back up. Like it was destroying people's brains.
I mean, you live and you learn. We know stuff now that we didn't know then.
Yeah, exactly. We never knew, of course. Like so many things. Smoking was cool.
I mean, now you
vape,
suck on a weird stick that puts some water vapors in your lung.
Yeah, man. I think people like that, they should smoke. They should get rid of the vape. I respect someone that actually lights up a cigarette now. I don't like the vape. Do the old school stuff.
You're not a quitter. That's my man right there.
Oh, good stuff.
So, I mean, I was checking you out on social media. Like, you have got, your content is phenomenal. Like, what strategies did you guys use to get? You're up to almost 120,000 followers.
No, we've got 28,000 or whatever. So we haven't got that many. Yeah, that's okay.
28,000 is a lot.
Yeah. It's gotten, and I've only started focusing on it since last June, and we had probably around 8,000 followers in June. So we've added close to 20,000 followers.
How the hell did you do that?
Also, like, oh man, I don't even know. But even and TikTok, we got like 9,000 or something. But we've had a video go to 3.5 million on TikTok. We've had 2 videos go to over 1 million on Instagram. I don't even know. I always wanted to do it. Like, I'd see people making content, and I studied audio engineering because I was in a band. So in high school, I studied woodwork and audio engineering. So I always loved editing stuff and putting things together. And my partner, she's in musical theatre. She's a performer. My mother owned a ballet school growing up, so I always danced a lot as a child. So I've always been I love the idea of filming, editing, being silly, performing. That doesn't really bother me. I was just always I never really saw the value in social media, which is me being super dumb, to be honest. I was just oh, who cares? I've got enough work. Social media is silly. I don't really need it. I would just use Instagram and just document restoring stuff, but I didn't really try to get followers or anything. I didn't really even think about people watching it. I just put it up for myself. And so I've had that Instagram for 10 to 12 years, and I had over that 10 years, I gained 5,000 followers or something, which is, over 10 years, that's not good. 5,000 followers is still, hey, more power to you. That's good. But over 10 years, I just didn't really try. And then I was like, I have more time. I've got more availability in the work now. So I was like, I'm just going to start filming stuff and putting things together. And a company also offered they were like, could you do some videos with our products that I use? And they're like, and we'll pay you to make some content. And I was like, yeah. As soon as someone was willing to pay me, I was like, yeah, dude, let me make something amazing. I was like, and I went crazy. So I don't know what the money, it doesn't even matter. Whatever they gave me, I spent 400 times the time on making the content and editing it. And so the first time I made an actual reel, I had spent probably 100 hours on it or something, and it got 100,000 views. The first one I made just was because I put so much, I'm like a nutcase. I put so much effort into it. But I'd like to say that I had more strategy or anything. And I didn't do a post every day or anything like that. I just started really opening myself up to the idea. I just everything I do in the workshop, I just started visualizing what like what's interesting about this. Not because it's very hard, as you would know, someone who works with the thing. It's really difficult because you don't know what's interesting. I've been doing it for 15 years. There's so many processes and things that are cool, but you're like, I don't know. This is my daily life. I don't know what's interesting. But I just started thinking, as I'm doing, I just started thinking of like, maybe I get an angle from over here. Maybe I shoot from over here. Maybe I do this. And then I started just really trying to dial in what's either funny or fascinating, or how can you like throw the audience, or how can I like confuse them a little bit? How can even like I did a stripping video, and I just like made it all like fall on the floor, and it kind of aggravated people. Everyone's like, why don't you put it in a bucket? And I'm like, this is funny. I thought that it will drive people crazy just watching stripper dropping on a floor. And it did. People are like, what's wrong with you? You know, just like all that kind of stuff. But I just really started focusing on it and editing a bunch of clips. And I think we only make like one video a week, or 2 videos a week, maybe. I post stories all the time, but I don't really have a strategy other than like when it hits me, when something makes me want to do something. You know, I try to approach it the same way I do furniture. I try to come at it like holistically. I don't really have a plan. I'm not a guy who has like a schedule and a plan. I like live in my workshop all the time. I think about it relentlessly. It occupies my entire brain 24/7. So it's just there's no like I wish I could pass over a strategy, but it's just being consistent.
I do kind of like the strategy of just how many people do I think this video will piss off, or what video would piss off the most people. That's
unfortunately, for a very long time, I had like a heavy disregard for my followers. I thought it was funny to piss people off. Like it's not a good. I was just like, oh, it'd be hilarious to do stuff and say like sort of anti-narrative stuff so it would get people. And the problem with social media is that like negative news moves so much faster than positive news. Getting people outraged, it gathers far more attention than bringing light into the world. And like making people, rage baiting people, unfortunately, gets way more views. So I used to do that as a joke. Now, and we've done like beautiful videos and they do well, but I just try to inject maybe something that isn't quite right sometimes into it, where like, you know, stripping, that was like an ASMR video, which that's probably my biggest tip, is like the most things that ever went like large or whatever. I don't even know what's large, but the most viewers we've got is ASMR video. So no music, just like scraping, changing angles, washing, quick before and afters, that sort of thing over like 20, 30 seconds. But people are weird, man. They like seeing the scraping and the noises and the washing. And that stuff I find is a little bit like algorithm hacking. You can get those things to move kind of easily.
The nice edited stuff, it doesn't really move anymore. Like you got to be a little more raw.
Yeah, which is a shame because you're right. I do everything in app now. I used to sit down and I'd edit everything because I like using my Mac to edit everything. But now I do most of it in app and it's gone way better. And when it's like super high production and beautiful, which I prefer doing, even if it takes more time, it's just more rewarding. I did like one video that I sat there and just edited for 5 seconds and it went to like 500,000 views. And then I spent ages on something and it got like 1,000. And I think everyone has these stories. You're just like, oh, whatever. And then you go, well, do I just put in less effort? But I just don't think that's ever the answer to any question. I don't think less effort is ever, the right strategy.
Should never be the goal going in, is the least amount of effort. Yeah, I posted this video. I mean, downloaded it because someone else posted it and thought it was funny. It was like some reality show in the US, and it was just a clip over these 3, we'll say hefty Italian guys fighting over who took what slice of the pizza when they already made the imaginary line down the middle, and some guy reached over, and I posted that video. It was like, this is pretty funny. It's got like 2.5 million views. And I'm like, what? I don't understand it.
Well, that actually got me. The first thing that ever went to like anywhere near the hundreds of thousands was like me dancing on my bandsaw. And it was silly. I was like, hey, Jamie, can you turn the bandsaw on? And I was like, I'll try. So I'm like dancing, trying to turn the bandsaw on. You know, that's the gag. And then I was kind of sad about it going to 500,000 views because I'm like, this has nothing to do with what I do. It has nothing to do with like the craft. And it was just a silly joke. And then I'm like, I thought maybe anyone will ever watch what I do, the stuff I actually like. Then I started making, real videos about the process and before and after and all that sort of stuff. And they just wouldn't go as well. And now they're starting to gather steam. Like it's better now. And I'd rather push that stuff out than just try to like chase an audience. So like I don't really like, you have to like respect what everyone wants and everyone like what gets the views, but I have no interest in chasing it as well. I have like, if you start sort of feeding into it, I feel like you'll become just someone who's looking for like likes or views or something like that. There's easy ways to like algorithm hack, and I've really got like no interest in it. Half the time I know some things aren't gonna really go well, but it's what represents the workshop, what represents the business, and what we want to put out into the world. And I go, well, we need to have 90% of that, and then the rest is like, I find it kind of a little easier now. This will hack the algorithm. It'll get a bunch of reach. People will view it, but then they'll come and they'll see the real content, and then they'll stay. That's probably my only thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I found that, and it's what I try to tell some of my clients that I coach is, and you do probably the best that I've seen, is social media. They want to know the person, the company, who is the company, who's the person. They want to know you. It's kind of that mixture. Like you said, you got to have your product and your stuff in there, but they want to know you. They want to know who they're buying from.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and like so much what we do here is so serious. Like, and I have meetings with clients all the time, and it's all so lofty and so serious. But like, who needs their furniture restorer to be an incredibly serious guy? Like, I work all the time, and then I'm like, but I like having fun with the content, and I like being like silly, and I like playing jokes on the audience, and I like letting them to who I could put up like a bit of a facade and act as like you could do like a sort of mysterious genius, wizardy kind of guy who just sits in his workshop and works away, and you could shoot it like it's all very serious, but it's just not who I am. And I think people are like, oh great, that guy does fairly good work, like it's probably higher than the average person, and he's doing like a fairly, like he's putting effort into the content, but he's not taking it too seriously. And one of the problems with Australians is if you take things too seriously, people, I think it's way better in America, people will like celebrate you for taking things seriously and like taking yourself seriously and being the best version of yourself. In Australia, people are like, look at this idiot who thinks he's so good. There's a big like tall poppy syndrome. Everyone's like, oh, look at this guy who thinks he's better than us. So if you act like a bit silly and stuff, everyone kind of accepts you a little more in Australia. If you make fun of yourself, it works a little bit better. So I don't know. And not that you cater to that, but it's just in our culture not to really take ourselves too seriously.
I mean, but there's something to be said in like embracing that for just, what's the word I'm looking of? I don't know, call it, I don't really like the word work-life balance, but work-life balance, or just, at the end of the day, it's just a job. Like, I wish more of that was probably here in the US, because it is very serious and suits, and it's just like, guys, like, we're just working and shooting the shit.
Yeah, the only thing I love about the US though is I find the US, they're like the greatest people. You guys are always so supportive and so happy when you see someone's success. I don't think there's anything more. If you tell an American about your plans and what you're doing and your goals, they're always like, get it, good for you. Like they're so supportive, and it's so refreshing. In Australia, like lacks that deeply at its core. We have like a well, who the hell do you think you are? It's a very like hangover from the British society that we have. It's very much like you don't get too big for your boots. Like it's I love that about the American culture. I do love the fact that as much as there's probably like a too much of like a grind, go get it, work every day, blah, blah, blah. There is an aspect of that, but you also are like so respectful of doing that. And you guys like celebrate people that achieve stuff. If people achieve stuff here in Australia, sometimes there is a large part of society, probably an overwhelming part of society, where they're like, oh, look at this dickhead. So I know it doesn't make a great deal of sense, but it is what it's like.
I mean, it's interesting.
It's strange. So as much as I don't lean into that, there is an aspect. If you keep it a little lighthearted and a little funny, you definitely will reach an Australian audience a little more than just being uber serious. And like, I love, you guys will like talk about like your plans for the business and where you're going, and like you'll let people into that side. I don't think that works here as much. People just want to like see it, and they don't want to know that. They don't want to know all about like the ins and outs of the business.
Like they
sometimes.
say in the U.S., they don't want to know how the sausage is made. They just want the sausage.
Yeah, they don't. They just want to see it. They don't want you to be like, yeah, so I'm trying to get more clients. I'm trying to make more money. I'm increasing this by 300%. People will be like, oh, yuck. Like it's you're sort of crossing the social contracts in Australia. It's a little bit more, and Australians wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't, but they're a little bit more conservative like that than the US. I love that about the US.
That is, I've never heard that. I like that. I mean, that's interesting because I mean, we are very much, let's go get it. Sometimes I wish it was not. It's got to be a balance.
Totally. But yeah, as far as the content goes, sorry, I keep going off on tangents. But as far as the content goes, I just have really dialed in on it, and it has been one of the most profitable things we have done for the business. And so I had no real interest in doing it. And as much as so many times where you just don't get anything, you feel like you get nothing out of it. And it was really hard to start doing. I find the hardest thing was actually just to do it and to put it out there. It was quite stressful. Like I was like, oh man, I cannot be bothered doing this. I was really afraid of what people would think of you, because you're like, you do restoration, you put photos out there. But then when you start like seriously doing it, and you're doing it like all the time, there's like a lull period where people, for me, it was quite difficult. But then you start doing it, and the amount of upside that has come from doing it is massive. I used to have 5 employees, and I just hated the work. I was just managing everybody. And so I sacked everybody. And then I moved the workshop and just operated myself. Now I have one guy working for me, and we only do the really high end stuff now. And we are doing way better than we ever were with a whole bunch of employees. And we're driving a whole bunch of effort into the content and the online stuff. And the brand partnerships and everything we've done has almost, in a lot of months, it outdoes what we make in the finishing. So it's been a instead of having like a big, verbose, bloaty business where you have a lot of people paying a lot, going smaller and directing far more attention online and demanding more like higher value jobs from higher value clients. It's been way better, and it's way more relaxed. I mean, just having to punch furniture out. It's been really great. So as far as the content goes, it has been worth it.
I had a cabinet shop long time ago. I mean, when I had my painting company, and the owner, great guy. He's passed since then, but he told me like because I was trying to grow my business, and he said, just be careful, because if you get too big, you're just feeding a beast. And I got there, and I had like 12 guys, and it was just a beast. Like, you take every project you can because you're overhead, and you got guys to pay, and you're, I don't want to say sacrificing quality, because you can do it without that, but it's just every job is a must win. Same thing.
And with that volume, even if you, like you say, it's not the quality, you don't want to purposely drop the quality, but at volume, just more problems occur. There's just no way to avoid it. And maybe you're the kind of, like, if you can, I feel like now I could run a bigger shop far better, like by like going just higher value. Now we charge more, and and I could have just done that. I could have charged more and brought in better work, but it's hard because you've got to feed so many hands. You've got to bring in jobs for the certain months. And I hated that. It got to a point where I would see some jobs, and I would look at it. This is going to sound mean. I didn't like the piece of furniture. I didn't like the client, and I didn't like the profit margin on it. And I was like, there's just, who wants to be in a business like that? Who wants to look at something and go, I don't like that thing.
But you
don't
can't
like
say no, because
yeah,
it's January, and you've got to keep the 5 or 6 guys in the shop busy.
Yeah, and you do it, and it becomes like that where you like love the people that you work with. So I'm like, I need to help these people out. But it got to a point where it was like it was going to fail now or fail later. And so I just looked at it and like, I don't like these jobs. I don't want to do this. And so I just had to sack everyone, and then start back at, because we were basically making profit off the high value jobs anyway. Once I sat down, really looked through the numbers, I'm like, we're making money on the really high end jobs. And then if I reduced it down to something smaller, and then it was just we're doing less than half the work, and we have so many inquiries. I've never had any problems with leads for some reason. We've just always had loads of inquiries that we only need to take 30% of the inquiries that come in. And after sitting down, doing the math, 30% of the people would pay 3 to 4 times more. So that's all I did. Just dialed it right back, charged a bunch more, and it's been so much easier.
I've long said, I've thought about it, and I mean, I do like the podcast too much to try and go back into it, but if we settle down, I've thought maybe I'll open another shop, but it'll just be like high end, high gloss finishes, or maybe just do samples for designers and just be me, because I don't want the people.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And I've also, like, I'm a big people person, love chatting, love talking stick, but I need like so much time to myself, and I love having the workshops myself. And so everyone wants to think they're the guy. Like, everyone wants to believe they're like this big entrepreneur with all these large, voluminous dreams or whatever. And I just really do think that I'm more of a guy who's more like artistic. It's more of a creative pursuit. I'm not really an entrepreneur. It's way more of like I outsource my skill more than anything. Like, I don't have any commodities that I sell. I don't add on to anything like that. I just trade out what I'm good at, and basically freelancing and ability more than anything. I don't really see it as entrepreneurial as much as starting a business, doing all that.
It's entrepreneurial, and it's like I tell some of my clients, I'm like, I mean, we'll spend 2 to 3 months on one question. What the hell what do you want?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, I mean, everyone thinks that as an entrepreneur that you have to get big, you have to grow, you have to scale. And I'm like, no, what do you want? Like, what does Jamie want? And once you establish that, then that's where all your goals are led around the want.
Yeah, man, that's spot on. And I think that's what you have to do, though. I feel like you end up wanting to grow to a certain point. You don't know what your limits are, because you just go, I just want to be the biggest, the best, the baddest, the most aggressive, the most competitive, kill everyone. I'm joking. But you just like, and then when you get to a certain, you sort of realize where your equilibrium is. I was like, well, I liked it when it was this, and I don't like it when it's this. And it's funny. It feels like you're sort of giving into, like, it feels like you're regressing in business. You feel like by dialing back, there's something very counterintuitive to it. It doesn't feel right. You're like, what am I doing? I thought I wanted to you want to keep adding to it. But a lot of people are afraid they'd rather fail and look like they're not failing. They'd rather have a big business and look big or whatever, other than looking like you failed by like dropping everything back, making it smaller, making it more concise, doing exactly what you want, and being like, yeah, it's me and one other guy. And that's how I like it.
But that's what I want.
Yeah. And it works well, and it's more profitable, it's more enjoyable, and we can do far more of the content, and it's been far better than having a big shop with a bunch of people in it, for me anyway.
Yeah. I mean, my funnest time in my shop was always when a customer would come in, or designer be like, can you make this? And I'd be like, well, I don't know. Give me a couple weeks. Let me see if I can duplicate this random piece of marble finish on a piece of wood. I don't know. Maybe.
That's oh man, totally. You get that. Can you match this? And you're like, just leave it. I don't know. Leave it with me. We'll see. People think you're crazy.
Call me in 2 weeks and I'll send you pictures of what I did. And it's like evening or weekend in the shop. I used to shut down for holiday at Christmas for a week, but I'd still go to work every day, and I'd be working on weird stuff, spraying music out, jamming. It's way better than when the shop was full of people and everything was going. It's just you. Oh yeah.
No, you can just vibe by yourself. I know it is beautiful. And Australia, and I don't know if this might be a difference as well. Australia is your minimum wage is very expensive. So having a bunch of employees, like no one earns any less than like if your bottom guy's earning $30 an hour. So it's very expensive to add people into the business. So we don't have. Yeah. So, and then we pay, well, I think, what do you guys, we call it superannuation. You guys call it something else, when you pay a fund for people's retirements. You guys call it something else.
Yeah.
Some other yeah. So, but it's very expensive. So, I mean, if I employ just a base level guy on the books doing a thing, it's costing me over $1,000 a week with everything involved. So you add 5 guys into the mix, you're paying $5,000 a week.
That's a lot of furniture pieces.
Yeah, dude, you got to move. You got to stick and move a fair bit. But it's. I mean, I was speaking to a friend of mine who moved to the US, and he's a comedian. But I was super interested to hear that he said there's just like guys out. There's like Mexican dudes out the front of like Home Depot that'll be like, "Hey, can I give you a hand?" Like, I had no idea that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist in Australia. Like, it's so hard to get. Yeah, we don't have class or people like, because you guys have immigrants and stuff like that, or people that need to work and earn money or whatever. We have such a heavy immigration policy, and we're just an isolated island. We don't have workers that you can like just pay cash or whatever generally. So, and such a small population, everyone needs to earn a living wage. So you can't I feel you can't bring a bunch of people in to do a bunch of jobs at like I don't know what you'd say, low price, reasonable price, however you see it. It's you have to pay people like seriously. It's a fairly decent wage. So it's quite hard to grow, like vertically integrate a system like that in refinishing or in furniture. You could do it in something where you're buying and selling and like moving product.
Yeah. But when you're selling a service, that's a whole different monster than selling a widget.
Yeah, totally. And you've got like a big overhead, and you've got the products. It's a bit of an ugly business to grow, it's a service-based business like that is a little bit of a mutant. So you've got to find where that sits the best in the market you're in. And I've find that in this environment, this is probably where it sits best.
You're in that pocket. Yeah. Like here in America, it's, and I tell guys this, up to like 5 or 6 guys, and you can run it as a single owner, and still do all the paperwork. You can run probably up to 8 guys. I would say 6 to 8 guys, and be successful. Be a business owner. You'll make good money, maybe clear a couple $100,000 a year, and be able to pay your guys. But beyond that, you have to have like 30 guys.
Yeah. It's hard.
So it's like you're stuck. It's like 8 or 30. You can't, there's in the middle there, you're just hemorrhaging money. There's no money to be made.
Yeah, it's difficult. And you have to really assess, like you say, what do you want? And I was just like, the more I think about it, the more I want to just do a lot of the work and focus on just nonstop getting better, as in just at what I do, and just like closing out the world and just getting way better, relentlessly just getting better at the thing. That's all.
I like that. So I got a question for you. This is something that's come here to the US, and I'm curious if it's in Australia, because most of it's coming out of Europe. And liquid metal coatings. Do you guys do much with liquid metal coatings?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, there are guys that have. I don't know much about it. I know there was a guy who would spray like these liquid metal chrome style finishes for. Is that the sort of thing we're talking about?
Sort of. There's a company now that they're fairly big in the US. I want to say, I can't remember where they're out of. It's in Europe somewhere. It's where they're manufactured, but it's powders. They're metals, whether it's copper, bronze, metal, gunmetal, magnesium, and they blend the metals, brass, but they're microns. It's a powder. It's a dust of the actual metal. And you buy it by the weight. And then there's a binder. There's a solvent binder and a water binder. And you mix it. And you spray it like a liquid coating. And then once that binder evaporates out, it is the actual metal.
Damn, I like the sound of that.
It's brass, and you polish it like brass. You clean it like brass. It patinas like brass. Same thing with copper. Same thing with gunmetal, magnesium, iron. Vero metal is probably.
What does it do to your the solvent one? You don't know. I wonder, is it like where you have to wash your gun out in a certain period of time after, like when you do a 2-pack or something? Because it's funny.
The solvent one is a 3-pack. So you've got your binder, and then you've got like a cobalt that goes in there. So you got your metal, your binder, and a cobalt. The water base is just a 2-pack. So it's just got your metal and then your binder, and there's additives where if you want to trowel it, makes it thicker and gives it longer wet time. But when you spray it, it looks like dog shit. Because it's like shitty brass, and then you start with 1,000 and go up to like 8,000, and it's a mirrored finish.
Oh my god! So this is that sounds so cool. God, that sounds interesting.
It's so much fun to play with, and if you leave it alone, it will patina just like a piece of brass will.
Oh man, that has so many applications, especially like in.
Yes, I was like, I'm wondering if that's because it's probably only been here a couple years, and it still hasn't really taken off. It's kind of, but it's not an inexpensive product.
Yeah.
But the method behind it is, I've got a high-end kitchen, and they want a polished brass vent-a-hood that's 8 feet tall. Well, you can build it out of plywood, apply this brass finish, and then polish it and put like a ceramic nano coat over the top of it.
Yeah.
And it'll
That's
stay
so
polished
cool.
brass forever.
I just love that idea because, I mean, we do a lot of brass work, and we have, inlay a bunch of brass work, and we'll have cut it and curve it around, bends and things. It's a nightmare, like to bend brass without creasing it and then fixing it without, denting it. It's hard work. That would be so fun to be able to tape everything off and just spray a coat on it, then just polish it up. God, that would be great.
Dude, I mean, look into Vero, Vero metals.
Yep. Metals.
Find them on social media. And there's like a couple other ones, but I would say Vero is the one that has got it down really well, because their grinds have like 3 different micron size of their grinds. Like I don't want to say a hodgepodge, but they've done it, and they found that ratio. I mean, if you just look at them on social media and you see some of the stuff that they have, that they polish up, it's a mirror. I mean,
that would be so cool.
Perfect.
That'd be so interesting. There's so many thoughts going through their head about how that has so many great applications, especially like we do some 3D printing here and stuff as well. So I could there's just you could 3D print a mold, spray it, then you have all these tiny little brass pieces we could inlay. There's just so many goddamn applications for that. That sounds fascinating.
And it's, like I said, it's new, but that's why when you're telling me about what you're doing, I'm thinking, I wonder if Vero is over in that area. I mean, and most of it's shipped. I mean, it's all shipped. I mean, and I know the guy who runs Vero North America. He's actually in Europe right now visiting some clients about, there's some big projects.
Oh man, how cool.
Oh man, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love new products. I know a lot of guys don't like a lot, especially in it probably doesn't sound like we do because we do such old, strange things. But the chap I learnt off, John, who was just so bloody talented, he was like, and he was quite old at the time, but he was always interested in new stuff. He was always trialing new things. Like he just never ever just was like happy with his skill set. He was just always like, if he went out to the hardware store, he'd always bring a bunch of stuff he'd never used before. If he found anything online, he'd always just order stuff and play with it. And I really feel like you have to, even just out of like the enjoyment and the fun and seeing where things are going. I always think it's important to do, especially for like people in our industry where it's like old stuff and people get stuck and just offer their clients like one solution. They're like, I do X. So you make the client fit the mold, where it's way better to be able to like, have a larger offering and try to cater it to the client's needs. I find a lot of people do like this thing I call like faux specialization. They only know how to use one product. And then they're like, But they're like, yeah, but I specialize in this thing. And I'm like, no, you only know one thing. You don't. Specializing is when you have like broad spectrum knowledge and then you dial in on one aspect. You actually don't know anything.
That's pretty good. Like, I specialize in pre-cat. No, you just don't know shit.
Yeah, it's the only one you know, and that's fine. If that's all you know, that's cool. That's okay. But don't be like, yeah, but I'm the guy who knows the thing. It's like, yeah, you know one thing, and that's okay. Like, there's guys here in Australia who do lots of oil finishes, especially in the restoration. Everyone uses like a Osmo oil or a Fiddy's oil. I don't know if you know those. They're those roll-on polymer kind of oils, and they dry hard or whatever. But people just use that and they're like, oh yeah, we specialize in mid-century and we specialize in oil finishes. And I'm like, yeah, you do rolling oil. That's fine. And it has applications, but that's mainly the only finish you know. It's like a faux, we specialize in this cool thing. Like, yeah, maybe.
Fake special. That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the faux specialization. I don't know. I should stop talking because I'll get in trouble.
I like it though. Faux specialized.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's good stuff.
Good night. Well, hey, I don't want to keep you too much longer. We're wrapping up. I mean, we're getting on an hour here. I know you're in the beginning of your day.
Yeah, dude. What is it here? I think it's been on there. It's about 7 o'clock here.
Yeah, we're at 2 o'clock here in Texas. So I think that means it's about time to crack a beer.
Hell yeah. Me too. No, I'm joking. So we start our day down here. No, I mean, thanks a lot. I'm so stoked what you're doing. I hope you keep pushing along because and I think you got a real talent for it, man. I listened to a bunch of your podcasts. I think you're doing really great. And yeah, you've definitely got an ability. It might be something to do with being the bartender. I don't know, like having that relationship. There's like a beautiful relationship between client and bartender where you're like friend, psychoanalyst, alcohol giver.
Well, it's like I say my goal for 25 is to build a studio, and because I want to bring people in, sit down, shoot the shit. But inside that studio is totally going to be a bar. It's
the same sort of skill set. Being able to chat to people is the same thing. It's a honed skill of being a bartender. So I think you're doing a really great job. I think you're really good at it. I think you should definitely keep going, and I'll keep listening.
Excellent. Well, yeah, and then we'll have to. I had somebody recommend, and it will have to definitely have to happen. So 25 is bringing guests here, building a studio, building a hub for the finishing community, and then somebody was like, "Shit, it may have been Aaron." No, it wasn't Aaron. It was someone else that was like 26. You need to go on the road and just tour various cabinet shops and finishing shops and do like on-site episodes. And I was like, oh shit, that could be fun.
That's how I started my podcast. When I first started, I would go into shops and I would set everything up, and I sold it as a branding package to the company. So I would go there and I'd do the filming, I'd do the editing, and I'd get the content, and I'd get big clients because I would offer them a whole branding package for nothing, just to get the access to them. So I would do that. And then that's kind of what we're doing with this production company we're working on now, is something very similar, where we're going in, we're trying to do beautiful cinematic style. And we're actually just showing, like, it's going to be just like snippets, 20 seconds, 30 seconds of just trying to like get to the heart of what someone is about, what their journey is about. And so we're like trying to really shoot beautiful stuff, go on site and offer people something that really honors the work that they do. And we're doing that, and then we're working on a sort of a pitch for a show to a bunch of streamers, where we are literally going around different places and speaking to arts people and crafts people and makers. We're also going to Spain at the end of the year to shoot a bunch of episodes for that. So we're really trying to push that a lot, which I wouldn't have had the ability to do when I had 5 guys. Now we have the ability to do all these creative processes. So that's what we're doing next. I don't know when this is coming out because no one's supposed to know about any of this. So that's a little bit of a secret. And if I could also get in trouble for telling anybody. But yeah.
Listeners, don't tell anybody. When this episode airs, we'll try to parlay that a little bit.
Yeah, everyone's like, shut up, that guy's an idiot.
Guys rolling a wall saying, what the hell are these guys talking about?
Yeah, who's this guy think he is?
Oh shit. Well, before we log off, one of my favorite parts is just real quick. I want the listeners to get to know Jamie outside of dealing in design. What's hobby? What's something interesting that might catch us off guard about you?
Yeah, well, we grew up classic Australian life on the beach. So big water guy, love surfing, played AFL, so Aussie rules, football growing up, love football, big into jiu-jitsu, ran a bunch of marathons, big into just relentlessly outside of here. I like exercising and doing all
Sounds
that
like
sort of
punishing
stuff.
yourself a lot, but
Yeah. I got to get the demons out somehow. So it's all mainly jujitsu, surfing, restoration. That's basically who I am, what I love.
Nice. Awesome. Well, man, Jamie, I appreciate you coming on. This has been an awesome show. A lot of fun. I haven't laughed this much on an episode in a long time.
Oh man, I hope so. I hope it hasn't been too silly. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope the listeners can understand a word of my silly Australian accent.
I think they'll do great, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on. If you guys aren't following Jamie, shoot out your socials real quick so everybody can go check you out on LinkedIn or.
Yeah, we're just dealing in design everywhere. So dealing in design. We mainly just go to the Instagram. Don't even worry about the website. The TikTok, don't even worry about it. That platform confuses me. So
we may not have it here in I don't know, supposedly another 15 days.
Oh yeah, unless Elon buys it, I hear Elon might be buying it. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I heard he was going to buy it. I haven't jumped on TikTok at all. With my wife being in defense, we kind of stay away from that.
Oh yeah, you guys aren't allowed to.
Yeah, so we talk about Elon buying it. I saw some deal the other day that it's like his net worth when Tesla shot up was like $465 million or something, billion. And it was like all the things that he could buy.
It's crazy.
And it was like he could buy every NFL football team in the US and still have over $200 billion left.
Oh man. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that is it's like mind-meltingly crazy. But I mean, it probably is Chinese spyware, so we'll see what happens with it. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the US. So, but it's got an ability to go viral like nothing else. It's such a bizarre thing. I put up stuff that gets nothing, and then stuff gets millions of views, and I don't really understand the whole thing. But yeah, dealing in design on the Instagram.
Excellent. Everybody go check him out. Thanks for listening. Remember, every Monday got a new episode coming out, and we will see you next week.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Bearded Finisher Podcast. We thank everyone for joining. Keep hustling, keep learning, and never settle for anything less than your best. Remember, the path to perfection is a journey, not a destination. Until next time.